Hello, this is Matilde Frott from Top Universities. We're here in London to speak to students about the general elections and how they're planning on voting.
I am voting for back home in Wales, and I'm voting for Lib Dem. Contested seats between Lib Dem and Conservatives.
Who are you going to vote for in the general elections this year?
Labour.
Why?
Because Jeremy Corbyn represents a sort of genuine progressive platform, hopefully.
So I had a look at, it's very exciting for students because they have the choice. Do they vote at where they're studying or in their home place for UK students?
So you're going to vote tactically then?
Absolutely. No, so find a great website that sort of, I looked, checked out Holborn and St Pancras here has been a secure Labour seat for, 30 years or so, I think. So I know last year in the previous general election, my home constituency, there were 70 seats in it. So I need to get back there and support him.
Are you going to vote in the general elections?
No, I'm an international student. I'm from Australia, so yeah.
And if you could vote, who would you vote for?
I would vote for the Conservative, judging Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn, just by judging on the leaders.
I think I'll probably be voting Lib Dem or Green because they've got the best Brexit mandate at the moment. They seem to have the best ideas on that part for me.
What are your thoughts on the Lib Dems as a Lib Dem voter?
I think actually their policies that they've presented in the manifestos have been really good for young people. But then I don't really think there's any chance that Tim Farron's going to be Prime Minister.
What about the Green Party and the Lib Dems appeals to you the most?
At the moment, yeah, because I think this referendum is basically the election is basically about the Brexit referendum, and they've got the possibility of having a second referendum on it or trying to make it a softer Brexit. And at the moment, that's the most important thing for me, trying to get a career in languages and in Europe in general. That's the most important thing.
I think I will be voting Labour. I think, honestly, if it was a different election, if it wasn't quite so tied up with Brexit, I'd be slightly more tempted to perhaps vote Green, but I feel like with the way our system is, it needs to be a bit more tactical for this one in particular.
If you could vote, who would you vote for in the general election?
It's a tough question. I talk with my friends, and he says he'd vote for May just for the cohesiveness, I suppose, of the party. He says that the Labour Party's not very, their goals are not in line, I suppose, between Corbyn and the party, which would cause problems. Yeah.
If I was basically voting between Tory and Labour, because none of the other ones are that viable, I guess, to be in power. Because I wouldn't support the Tories because they pushed for Brexit in the first place. That's where I was coming from. But I don't necessarily agree with what everything's. To be honest, I would have a very hard. If I was actually a British citizen and were allowed to vote, I'd have a very hard time picking between the two.
Who are you going to vote for in the general elections?
Labour, Jeremy Corbyn.
Why?
I don't think that austerity is necessary. I think that we can flourish as a society taking care of the people that are most vulnerable without making these horrendous cuts to the most vulnerable people in society.
Who are you going to vote for in the general election?
I'm not actually going to vote.
What are your thoughts on Jeremy Corbyn?
I think ideologically he's very sound, but I don't think he represents the party enough as a whole to be their leader.
Wow. I suppose it's a fuzzy character with some real romantic ideas, which would be amazing in a perfect world, but he just hasn't captured the nation's imagination.
I don't think that he's the most efficient leader, but at the same time, I'd rather vote for a leader that has an ideology that it has something to recommend it.
What are some of the things that you most disagree with and agree with in the Labour manifesto?
So I most agree with nationalisation of the railways because I think that the state of the railways at the moment is very poor.
What are some of his policies that you deem to be a bit too romantic?
Nationalisation, not for that. Don't see any proof that it would improve our economy elsewhere. They point to the Eastern Railway little scheme that seemed to work. But even the director of that has come out and said that he can't see that happening on a nationwide scale. So I think that's a little bit not enough evidence. Yeah.
What about his plan to scrap tuition fees?
Well, as a student, I'm all up for that. Mightn't exactly help me out, but for the generations to come, in principle, free education that's the ideal. That's where we want to be.
I like the idea of re-rationalising the nailways and these things. And I think largely for me, a lot of it's to do with the NHS and the treatment that receives. Both my parents work in the NHS, so I kind of like just have experience of kind of like watching like how it unfolds and how it impacts them when they're at work, kind of like the challenges that they have to deal with. So that's really kind of like one of the main things. And then really, the other kind of thing is that I want some sort of opposition for the Conservative government during kind of like the period. I don't necessarily see Labour winning the election, but would like to at least see some sort of opposition rather than Theresa May having such a free hand to do a particularly hard Brexit.
Who are your friends voting for?
A mixture of where they're voting, so Labour or Lib Dem. I don't know anyone who's voting Tory. I think that's just like my demographic of friends.
I think my friends are all Labour. I think there's a genuine stereotype about Conservative, which is for the upper class, and I don't generally come from an upper class area, so that's what I've heard. I don't know if it's true.
I have discussed the general election with my friends. Unfortunately, some of them are voting Tory, but I'm trying to convince them to the opposite opinion.
Lots of my friends are voting for Labour and do think that we shouldn't sort of be splitting the left by voting for other things, which I completely understand. But I think it's sort of, at the end of the day, it's still an ideological vote for me, and I think that's how people should vote in general.
A lot of people vote Labour because they've been supporting Labour for years, and that's one of the reasons. And I think that is not the valid reason.
And whether it's the Conservatives or the Labour Party who gets in, you don't think it would make a huge difference?
Correct. I think life's what you make it. Do you know what I mean? I think what whoever's in Parliament won't really affect me. I'll still get on with what I'm doing. It won't really change what I do on a day-to-day. It might for others, but not for me. But yeah, that's just that's what I believe. I've never really been a big fan of Parliament and what they're doing.
All right, okay. Well, I think you should vote.
Nah, never gonna vote, never.
Well, as you can see, students in London have had very varied opinions on the general elections. Please don't forget to subscribe and like this video.